Heath Ledger, a brilliant actor in both Hollywood and indie films. A heartthrob who fought typecasting with roles that showed a stunning range of talent.
Heath Ledger was perhaps one of the most brilliant and complex actors of his generation.
He's a natural performer. He's really focused and disciplined and willing to do things that are outside of the box.
When he died at 28, Heath left behind a significant body of work and an impressive legacy.
Heath Ledger was a brilliant guy. He was very sincere. He seemed to me to be incredibly sensitive.
He left a will that threatened to tear apart the loved ones he left behind.
Absolutely, Heath Ledger would have wanted to mention his daughter in his will and take care of her.
During his life, what mattered most was his art. Yet in death, Heath's estate continues to grow. The fame, the fortune, the legacy of Heath Ledger. Ledger was as talented as he was handsome. He was a gifted chameleon who transformed himself with every role to create distinct and memorable characters. And he carefully and selectively chose those roles, and chose them well.
Heath Ledger first gained indie cred and then Hollywood credibility. And we know that Hollywood credibility means lots of money, especially when you've played a key character in a Batman film. Heath Ledger wanted to take on a variety of roles. In fact, he turned down many roles because he wanted to keep the edgy characters and not be stuck in the repetitive mode that some actors find themselves in. And he definitely wanted to overcome the stereotype of being just another pretty boy. And he did.
He arrives in Sydney with a small bag, his surfboard, and 69 cents in his bank account.
Heath Ledger was only about 17 years old at the time, so it's not surprising that whatever money that he would have earned from the project, he quickly spent through and was just as broke at the end as when he started.
Heath's big breakthrough comes in 1996 with Roar, a U.S. finance medieval fantasy series that is shot in Queensland, Australia. He stars as a Celtic prince, often clad in no more than a loincloth.
Heath Ledger received his first substantial paycheck for Roar at the age of 18, and this was the first time that American audiences had seen him.
But he also treats himself to a muscle car and a Land Rover.
Heath Ledger's starting to enjoy the financial success that's coming with his burgeoning acting career. So it's no surprise, like most young Hollywood actors, that he'd want to splurge a little and buy some fun cars and other toys.
It's a substantial role with a huge paycheck.
It was reportedly $3 million. That's a lot of money, even for Hollywood.
That paycheck gives him the capital to buy his first home, a 5,000 square foot, 5-bedroom mansion in the hills of LA's trendy Los Feliz neighborhood.
It's not just a home, this was an estate. This is a big purchase for a 21-year-old. He ended up moving into the estate, if you want to call it that, with his then-girlfriend, Naomi Watts.
Over the next 2 years, Heath builds his career through a range of character roles in Australian and U.S. films. His fees per film range from $50,000 for a low-budget indie up to $2 million for a Hollywood project. It's around this time in 2003 that Heath decides to make out a will.
It was really smart of Heath Ledger at the young age of 24 to be proactive enough to make out a will. Most 24-year-olds, even with the type of money that he has, don't do that.
Around this time, Heath takes out a life insurance policy from the Minnesota-based Relia Star Company.
It really is interesting that Heath Ledger would think to take out this large life insurance policy less than 6 months before he died. Reportedly at the time, he was starting to spiral out of control with drug abuse. He was worried about his former girlfriend, Michelle Williams, taking him to court to claim custody of his daughter, and he was really going down a dangerous path. So to stop and have the foresight to buy a huge life insurance policy at the time was really quite interesting.
When Heath's will is read, key loved ones shockingly appear left out.
His will was written 3 years before he passed away. This was before he met Michelle Williams or had his daughter Matilda. So in some ways, it wasn't surprising that this will didn't leave any money to Michelle or his daughter Matilda. Instead, it left half the money to his 3 sisters and the balance of the money to his parents. One would think, though, that he would have updated this will after his daughter was born, which he didn't. While he didn't leave his daughter anything through his will, he did have a $10 million life insurance policy set aside for her.
Even though Heath didn't update his will, he was smart and put most of his assets into a secret trust.
Instead of passing assets through his will, Heath Ledger used a revocable living trust. And because of that, it's a private document. The public wouldn't know who he's leaving his money to or how they're receiving it. And instead, the trustee would carry out Heath's wishes to distribute his assets to his beneficiaries. What wasn't addressed was some of his real estate holdings, like the townhouse he had in Brooklyn and the property that he had in Australia as well, because those assets were kept in a separate trust.
Because Heath's assets are spread across the will and the secret trust, it's difficult to know the value of his estate. Some reports estimate $20 million. And on top of that, laws are different in Australia when it comes to publicly revealing the contents of a will.
Wills are public documents and pass through the probate court, and that means they're open for all the world to see, at least in our country. Now, in Australia, it apparently is a little bit different because Heath Ledger's estate proceedings that took place in Australia were closed to the public. The records were sealed.
The mystery regarding the privacy around Heath's assets is finally solved. His millions and his mansions were cleverly hidden away in a secret trust account that the actor had amusingly named the Thank You for the Trust Trust.
Many celebrities go to great lengths to keep their privacy, and naming their trusts unusual names is one way to do that, which is exactly what we've seen here with Heath Ledger.
And that's why Heath Ledger used a trust that didn't even have his name on it, so when it was looked up in public records, nobody would have a clue that Heath Ledger really owned this property.
Meanwhile, the insurance policy Heath took out 6 months before his death still has not been paid out to her.
Heath Ledger's $10 million life insurance policy was a big source of controversy because the insurance company didn't want to pay it. They investigated Heath Ledger's death, and they claimed that it was either because of suicide or maybe because of drug use that he didn't properly disclose when he applied for that insurance policy. The insurance company even threatened to take the deposition of Mary Kate Olsen, who was a good close friend of Heath Ledger, who was around at the time that he passed away. Ultimately, the case did settle, and it kept everything private and out of court. And usually when that happens, it's a sign that most of that insurance money was paid over. The family was really critical of the insurance company, and the lawyers were saying publicly that they were just trying to squeeze the Ledger family for every dollar out of the life insurance policy that they could. So ultimately, you can assume from the settlement that the Ledger family got most of the money, if not all of it.
In August 2008, Heath's Hollywood Hills home sells for $2.5 million. The following month brings surprising news from the Ledger family, as Heath's father announces that the family will gift every penny of Heath's estate to Matilda Rose.
There was a lot of media coverage over this estate and whether there was going to be a big family fight because Heath Ledger didn't update his will. And when Heath Ledger's father came out publicly and said that the family was going to make sure that Matilda Rose got everything, it put these nasty public rumors and media speculation to rest and avoided a big public fight.
The success of The Dark Knight also adds to Matilda Rose's inheritance.
The Dark Knight grosses over $1 billion. Heath's contract included 1% of the gross on top of his $5 million fee. So that 1% adds another $10 million to his estate. That was a really good deal for Heath Ledger and a great deal for his estate.
Heath posthumously wins the Oscar for Best Actor for his role as the Joker in The Dark Knight, and his parents and sister Kate accept the award on his behalf.
The Joker really was a defining role for Heath Ledger, and there were reports that he became so engrossed in the character that he actually became the Joker when the camera wasn't rolling. But it was ironic that this big role of his only came out when he wasn't around to enjoy the fruits of it.
Heath Ledger is remembered fondly even to this day. His portrayal of the Joker is still talked about years after the film was released.